8-year-old child has been brought to chest OPD with complaints of fever, cough with occasional expectoration of rusty sputum. Chest X-ray show lobar consolidation. What may be the clinical diagnosis? What is the etiological agent, or maybe what are the etiological agents? How will you proceed to confirm the case and discuss briefly on immune prophylaxis against the disease? This could be a clinical scenario. So the main two organs which are affected by Streptococcus pneumoniae are lungs and CNS. That is meningitis. These are the two common situations. Other, it can also cause otitis media, it can cause rhinitis, it can cause rhinosinusitis. Even it is an organism for spontaneous bacterial peritonitis. So this is one scenario. Another scenario, a 4-year-old girl child, due to an acute onset of fever, neck rigidity and altered sensorium. Positive Brudzinski sign, CSF showed gram-positive lanceolated diplococci surrounded by a halo. So what is your clinical diagnosis? Most likely etiologic agent, and how will you confirm the etiological agent in the laboratory? Virulence factor, pathogenesis. So the questions from pneumococcus will come either in a lower respiratory lobar pneumonia or may come from meningitis. Indications for this rusty sputum, one of the features of Streptococcus pneumoniae, and whenever the immune prophylaxis is seen, that means some part of the vaccine. So you should know what is the pathogenesis, how it causes pneumonia or meningitis, what are the main virulence factor, and vaccines and treatment. So these are the two common situations where another question, a 2-year-old girl child diagnosed with bilateral otitis media. She was treated with amoxicillin, clavulanic acid. During the night, child became lethargic and developed purpura and nickel rigidity. This is another, it is initially in the otitis media or it was in the nasopharynx, then bacteremia has occurred and that caused the meningitis. So these are the few features where you should suspect of pneumococcus. So this is X-ray. This is a case of the right side is the upper zone lobar pneumonia and the left side is a mid-zone, left-sided mid-zone pneumonia. Now with this introduction, and you also know how to differentiate between Streptococcus pneumoniae and Streptococcus viridans group of streptococci in lab diagnosis. So these are the points you should know about pneumococcus. So it was first isolated in 1881 by Louis Pasteur, and association between lobar pneumonia was described by Friedlander and Talamon in 1883. Although vaccination efforts were underway in 1911, but first pneumococcal vaccine was not produced until 1977. The first pneumococcal vaccine came in 1977 and first conjugate vaccine in 2000. Now, some about the epidemiology. The pneumococcal disease occurs in all age group with the highest rate in children under 2 years of age. Average 75% of the inpatient cases and 83% of the pneumococcal meningitis occurred in children aged below 4 years. It is below 4 years is the most common in pneumococcal disease. It is a WHO estimate 5.83 million deaths among children, out of which 2,94,000 were due to pneumococcus. This is the WHO data, And pneumonia accounts for 14% of the all deaths in children under 5 years of age. So, is a leading cause of lobar pneumonia, otitis media and meningitis in all age. So, if you are asked what is the common agent, most common agent for causing meningitis, if all ages are calculated, then Streptococcus pneumoniae is the most common except the neonate. In neonate, the cause of meningitis, what is the cause of meningitis in neonates? You already had a Streptococcus class. Now, group B Streptococcus is the most common agent for neonatal meningitis. Previously, it was Escherichia coli. The statistics differs in different part of the country, but these are the two most common agents for causing neonatal meningitis. If, if it is a MCQ, you have to answer group B Streptococcus as the commonest agent for neonatal meningitis. So, they are alpha hemolytic colony and may present as commensal in upper respiratory tract. This alpha hemolysis, already in last Streptococcus, you had three types of hemolysis. One is beta hemolysis or complete hemolysis. One is alpha hemolysis or partial hemolysis. There will be a green color over the colony, and delta hemolysis or there is no hemolysis. So, the main two organism of alpha hemolysis is Streptococcus pneumoniae and viridans group of Streptococci. Now, this could be the lanceolate shaped or flame shaped diplococci in gram stem. It is a primary stem from a sputum. You can see this halo around is due to the capsule. This is Diplococcus and there is a halo around this Diplococcus. This is due to the capsule of pneumococcus. Now, what are the virulence factor? The first virulence factor is capsular polysaccharide. It is the principal, the capsule is the principal virulence factor that protects the cocci from phagocytosis. It is a type specific, more than 90 capsular serotypes are recognized. Being soluble, it diffuses into culture media, also called soluble substance. Next is C carbohydrate antigen or C polysaccharide. It has two importance. It is found as a virulence factor in pneumococcus, and another you must have heard the name of CRP. Have you heard the name of CRP? C-reactive protein. What is that? CRP is increased in any inflammatory condition, whether it is a bacterial infection or it is a viral infection. C-reactive protein is usually raised. Now, CRP, where it is produced in human body, where it is produced CRP? CRP is produced in the liver. So, it is increased in all inflammatory conditions. It is produced in the liver. Now, what is its relation with the C carbohydrate antigen? C carbohydrate antigen is species specific. It is made up of ribitol and teichoic acid. And what is the relation? Why we are discussing CRP with the C antigen of pneumococcus? Because that C reactive protein reacts with this C antigen of polysaccharide. But this is an incident that is not an antibody to this C antigen, but it reacts. That CRP produced in liver reacts with this C carbohydrate antigen of pneumococcus. So CRP, two things, it is not an antibody, it is produced in the liver, it is increasing the any inflammatory condition of our body, and it reacts with this C carbohydrate antigen of polysaccharide. C polysaccharide antigen of pneumococcus. Other, pneumolysine is a membrane damaging toxin, another virulence factor. which inhibits the neutrophil chemostasis, and it is similar to streptolysin O. Autolysin is an amidase enzyme, cleaves its own peptidoglycan. The activity is enhanced in presence of bile salts. This property is responsible. So, what are the virulence factor? First is capsule, second is the C carbohydrate antigen, then the pneumolysin, the autolysin, and autolysin is another important part. When we go to the colony, you have already, I think, might have read the carom-shaped or drought-span colony. There is a ammonated if you keep the culture for 48 hours, there is ammonation of the circular colony. This ammonation is due to autolysis. So autolysis lysine produced by pneumococcus autolyzes its own colony. So this is another part of autolysin. Other virulence factor, pneumococcal surface protein A prevents complement activation. IgA protease cleaves immunoglobulin A and present in respiratory mucosa. Pneumococcal surface protein C, known as choline binding protein A, and adhesins. These include sialidase. So these are the virulence factor of pneumococcus. But main virulence factor is again capsule. So these are the other virulence factor. Now clinical manifestation. How it spreads. It may colonize in the nasopharynx at an early age. From nasopharynx, the bacteria spread via bloodstream to distant sites. Brain, joint, bones, peritoneal cavity, and spread locally, causing otitis media or pneumonia. So it is also the pathogenesis, how the disease occurs in pneumococcus. So it usually colonizes in the nasopharynx at an early age, and the bacteria spread via bloodstream too. That's why when we are doing any respiratory sample or CSF, when you are suspecting pneumococcus, you also should do blood culture to exclude bacteremia or to prove the bacteremia. Better to say prove. So pneumococcal disease, whenever there is an invasive pneumococcal disease, whether it is a lobar pneumonia, you are getting or a CSF, you are getting diplococci. So another blood culture should also be sent to prove the bacteremia, because this is mostly due to bloodstream spread from nasopharynx. Lobar pneumonia is the most common cause of Streptococcus pneumoniae is the most common cause of lobar pneumonia. Starts with non-invasive illness due to contagious spread from the nasopharynx. It soon becomes bacteremic and invasive. What would be the clinical presentation? How the patient present to you? In a case of lobar pneumonia, it will be fever, productive cough, the second part. That is the difference between the typical pneumonia and atypical pneumonia. Whether it is due to chlamydia, mycoplasma or viral, their cough will not be productive. But in lobar pneumonia, when Streptococcus pneumoniae or other bacteria is involved for lobar pneumonia, that will produce a productive purulent cough, and there may be chest pain. What are the clinical signs? Clinical sign, when you examine, you can find there is dullness on percussion, not the stony dullness that is in pleural effusion, but dullness when you percuss, and you may find the crackles, that means crepes in that lung area where there is a consolidation. So these are the clinical features when you examine the patient. Now, pneumonia pathogenesis. This is not written in any microbiology book. These I have taken from Harrison's Internal Medicine. The pathophysiology of pneumonia, it is been changed in the last two edition, how the pneumonia occurs. Whether it is due to Streptococcus pneumoniae or other bacteria, the pneumonia, what they are saying, there is an inflammatory event before the bacteremia starts. So there is an inflammatory event resulting in epithelial damage and release of cytokines, chemokines and catecholamines, and which may selectively promote the growth of certain bacteria like Streptococcus pneumoniae and Pseudomonas aeruginosa. This cycle of inflammation enhance nutrient availability and release of potential bacterial growth factors may result in a positive feedback loop and further accelerates the inflammation and growth of particular bacteria. So in simpler word, there may be some insult, whether any inflammatory insult that may be due to virus that causes an inflammation in the respiratory endothelium, respiratory epithelium, which due to the inflammation, what occurs in inflammation? There is release of cytokines, chemokines, these are released. And those promote the growth of certain bacteria. Streptococcus pneumoniae is one of them. So some viral insult may be there. That means the patient may initially present with some viral infection that may promote the growth of Streptococcus pneumoniae also. This is one pathogenesis. Pathology. Classic pneumonia evolves through series of stages. What are the stages? You will read in details in pathology. This is not a part of microbiology. I have just included this slide. What are the stages of pneumonia in Streptococcus pneumoniae? One is initially the stage of edema and bacteria that time in alveoli, next into red hepatization phase and erythrocytes in the intraalveolar exudate, and the third phase is gray hepatization. But no new erythrocyte, but already present have been degraded or lysed, and neutrophil is the predominant cell. These phase correspond with the successful containment of infection in final stage resolution. So, if you, about the pathology, first part is some inflammation and alveolar some edema is there, proteinaceous exudate, followed by red hepatization, then followed by gray hepatization, and finally resolution. These are the 4 stages of pneumonia occurs in whether it is Streptococcus pneumoniae or any bacterial pneumonia. Clinical manifestation, empyema may occur, parapneumonic effusion may occur, and other is pyogenic meningitis. Streptococcus pneumoniae is the leading cause of meningitis in all ages, except neonates, that I have already discussed. Except neonates, if you calculate the all ages, Streptococcus pneumoniae is the most common agent for meningitis. Streptococcus pneumoniae other, it may cause osteomyelitis, it may cause septic arthritis, it may cause peritonitis, and rarely brain abscess and hemolytic uremic syndrome. So what pathology you should remember? One is pneumonia, one is meningitis, rhinosinusitis and otitis media. These are the most common clinical manifestation or the pathology caused by Streptococcus pneumoniae. Source of infection is human upper respiratory tract of carriers, less than patient. That means those people are not having any clinical features. Who are carriers? Carriers don't have the disease, but they carry the Streptococcus pneumoniae in the nasopharynx. More than 90% of the children of 6 months to 5 years of age harbor Streptococcus pneumoniae in the nasopharynx. So what is the mode of transmission? Inhalation route. So whenever you write the pathogenesis, you should mention this route also, how it is inhaled. So here in Streptococcus pneumoniae, the most common route of acquisition is through inhalation or respiratory droplets. Infection leads to colonization and carrier state. Now disease result when the host resistance is lowered. Children at higher risk to develop pneumococcal infection because inability to produce adequate antibody against the capsular antigen. Why? This is, all the capsular antigen are mainly dealt with in spleen. So when there is in children, the immune system is immature. When some patient having splenectomy for some disease, in those patients, the chance of infection with bacteria having capsule is more. So capsular bacteria, this is one part why it is more common in children 2 years. Another point, we have already have immunology case. Antigen is mostly protein in nature, but there are some polysaccharide antigen. But children below 2 years cannot initiate an immune response against polysaccharide. So here the capsule, pneumococcal capsule is of polysaccharide. That's why the immunity, the natural immunity against Streptococcus pneumoniae does not develop in children below 2 years. When we come to vaccine, that's why the advent of conjugate vaccine. Initially, the initial first vaccine was polysaccharide vaccine, but below 2 years, they cannot generate an immune response against the polysaccharide antigen. So this is the point why children below 2 years were more susceptible to pneumococcus. These are the 2 points. What are the risk factors where pneumococcal disease can occur? Splenectomy, sickle cell disease, and hemoglobinopathy. As the spleen is the site of destruction of the capsulated bacteria, the condition where opsonization and clearance of circulating bacteria by spleen is hampered, there is an increased risk of pneumococcal infection. So whenever you think of vaccine, any patient who is to undergo splenectomy, you need to give a pneumococcal vaccine at least 2 weeks prior to the operations. So as spleen is the main site for destruction of the capsulated bacteria. What are the underlying comorbid disease where pneumococcus disease can occur? That is chronic lung disease, chronic heart disease and liver disease. And also patients having cochlear implants, diabetes and HIV. And underlying viral respiratory tract infection, example influenza. When I was initially discussing the pathophysiology, I have told some viral insult is required to starting of the pneumonia. So this is the part, some viral infection, influenza usually damages the epithelial mucosa and that may promote the secondary infection of pneumococcus. These are the common serotypes. You may not remember, this is very difficult to remember what are the serotypes causing which disease. At your level, this is required why how the vaccines is prepared, which vaccines are includes which serotypes. So these serotypes 4, 6, 9, 14, 18C, 19F are common in children. In adults, serotype 1 to 8 are common and serotype 3 followed by serotype 7 are most virulent serotype. Now laboratory diagnosis. Before we go to the laboratory diagnosis proper, you already had a class of Streptococcus. Now how will you, the main differentiating with the bacteria is Streptococcus viridans or viridans group of Streptococci. So how will you differentiate these two bacteria? What are the common? Let pneumonia, I take the condition. That is a respiratory system. What is the difference? Both are alpha hemolytic colony. Both can be found in sputum. But this is non-pathogenic, viridans, and this is pathogenic. Now what are the differences? First difference is, this is usually flame shaped or lanceolate shaped. And this is basically gram-positive cocci in chain. and no capsule. So they are both producing alpha hemolytic colony. They can be found in the sputum. In normal patient, if we give our sputum, Streptococcus viridans will grow. This is a normal common sense. But whenever we are searching for Streptococcus pneumoniae, the cocci, I have drawn it large. It will be smaller cocci, but they are flame-shaped or lanceolate-shaped, the diplococci. And there is a halo. Then I have shown in the second or third slide, that is a gram-positive diplococci, that is lanceolate-shaped and have a capsular halo. And Streptococcus viridans has no capsule. Now, what are the biochemical tests? Remember, there are three biochemical tests. How will you differentiate these three? One is bile solubility. Inulin fermentation. And third is optochin sensitivity. So, three biochemical tests can differentiate Streptococcus pneumoniae from Streptococcus viridans. First is bile solubility, second is inulin fermentation, and third is optochin sensitivity. All three are positive in case of Streptococcus pneumoniae and all three are negative in case of Streptococcus viridans or viridans group of Streptococci. Three common biochemical tests other than gram stain and capsule, that is bile solubility, inulin fermentation, optochin sensitivity, all three are positive. And another is Quayland phenomena. That is positive in Streptococcus pneumoniae, that is an anti-capsular antibody type of stain that causes positive to the capsule. So these are the difference between Streptococcus pneumoniae. It can be even asked in the oral, and when you are writing the diagnosis, laboratory diagnosis of Streptococcus pneumoniae, you must mention this part. These three biochemical tests, initial gram stain and capsule, these are the part. Now, laboratory diagnosis. So you have already had a Neisseria class. So you should know the diagnosis of meningitis, lab diagnosis, what you should take. So what are the samples you will take for meningitis, suspected meningitis case, a patient clinical features? First is CSF, cerebrospinal fluid, and second is also blood culture. Because they are, so blood culture to be also done. Now CSF, what will you do? You are not confirmed whether it is a bacterial disease, whether it is a viral or it is a fungal disease. So what will you do with CSF? Any CSF, whenever you are writing any lab diagnosis of viral or bacterial meningitis or encephalitis, the protocol for processing the CSF is same. So what are the three tests should be done? CSF, what are the tests to be done? Whether it is a bacterial meningitis, but you have to remember the differential diagnosis also. You cannot pinpoint the diagnosis. You are in a clinical scenario when you cannot pinpoint it is due to bacterial or due to it is a parasitic. So any CSF sample, there are three parts. One is the cell type, cell count. One is the biochemistry part, the biochemical, that is sugar, protein and chloride, and the microbiology part. So, if it is not a same lab, you have to divide the CSF sample into 3 parts. One part will go to pathology for cell type and cell count. Second part will go for the biochemical test for sugar, protein and chloride. And third part is microbiology. So, what would be the cell type? What is your idea? The bacterial meningitis cell type is usually near about 1000 and it is mostly neutrophil. In viral meningitis, it is usually less than 100 and it is usually lymphocytes. There is another term, aseptic meningitis, that time cell count is low and mostly lymphocytes. And if it is a normal CSF, cell count is less than 0 to 5 cells you can find. And in case of tuberculous meningitis also, the predominant cell is around 500 cells and is also lymphocytes. Now for biochemical, sugar is usually decreased in bacterial infection and tuberculosis and protein is increased. Any bacterial meningitis or tubercular meningitis, the sugar component is decreased and the protein component is increased in case of bacterial meningitis as also in tubercular meningitis. Though our main part of discussion is microbiology part, what will you do with the microbiology part? What are the microbiology part you will do initially? These will be useful for any diagnosis of any CNS infection. So whenever you get any suspected CNS infection in your question, what to be done with the CSF? First is, one is wet mount before culture. One is wet mount. Second is gram stain. Jaden stain and the negative stain or India ink stain. So any CSF should be these 4 to be the initial staining part. And do you stain directly the CSF? The CSF you receive should be centrifuged and deposits should be taken for staining. So whenever you are mentioning CSF to be centrifuged and only deposits are taken for the stain. And what is the method of smear in CSF? You have done smear in the gram stain, a single layer. What we were telling, make a thin smear. But the CSF, the idea is different. We have to do multiple layer of smear. That is called layering. Otherwise, you won't get because the number of bacteria is very less. So smear is done by layering. At least 2 to 3 layers of smears are done after fixing one followed by another. So this part should be remembered. As the number of bacteria are very less in case of CSF, we should do a layering or multiple. So wet mount, why we are doing wet mount? So wet mount for free living amoeba, gram stain for bacteria, Jaden stain for tuberculosis and India ink for Cryptococcus. Now let's go to the culture. This is initially I have discussed. And sputum, what should be done? Sputum, if it is a respiratory infection, what you should do? Same thing, a gram stain. And how will you know this is a sputum and not saliva? Whether it is a properly expectorated sputum or not. So the number of pass cells should be more than 25 per low power field, and its epithelial cell should be less than 10. So this is how you know this is a sputum sample. Sputum sample initial gram stain, other than finding the bacteria, you should look for epithelial cell and pus cell. If epithelial cell is 25 and pus cell is 10, then it is probably saliva. The properly expectorated sputum was not sent. So sputum sample, first the quality check is number of pus cell should be more than epithelial cell. Pus cell more than 25 and epithelial cell less than 10. So this is a general part. Now we come to the culture of Streptococcus pneumoniae. Culture part, it is usually in blood agar. We can also detect the capsular antigen in CSF by latex agglutination. There is some kit test which can have antibody against the capsular antigen that can be detected by latex agglutination. So blood agar shows Drotzman on carom coin appearance. I have already mentioned why there is a carom coin appearance, the central ammonated due to the autolysin produced by pneumococcus itself. So that is the cause of carom coin colony. Chocolate agar, it produces greenish discoloration or bleaching effect. Now, anything about the incubation? When you are suspecting any Streptococcus pneumoniae, it is better grow in a environment of 5% carbon dioxide. Mention this part in the incubating condition, 37 degrees centigrade with 5% carbon dioxide. So incubating condition for Streptococcus pneumoniae is, incubation temperature is same, 37 degrees centigrade, but it grows better in presence of 5% carbon dioxide. Culture again reveals the same lanceolated gram-positive diplococci. Biochemical identification, I have already mentioned these three: bile solubility, optocin sensitivity, and inulin fermentation. That is the main differentiating point with viridans, which is a common cell. Serotyping by Quay-Lung reaction or by latex agglutination reaction. Quay-Lung reaction, just remember, this is the detecting the capsule. This is also a capsule. Mouse pathogenicity or mice animal pathogenicity test, if you are asked what is the most confirmatory test for pathogenicity, that is mean animal pathogenicity, but which is usually not done nowadays. Mice pathogenicity, that is the most, and molecular methods. Multiplex PCR. You don't have any idea of PCR at present, polymerase chain reaction, but nowadays different multiplex PCR are available. Multiplex means that detect in a single test, it detects many organisms. Multiplex PCR or microarray. These are molecular tests. Because when you go to any private hospital, whether any relative or a known person is admitted in a private hospital, you must have heard the name of one test that is called BioFire. What is the advantage of that microarray? What is the turnaround time for culture? You need at least 48 hours to give a culture report along with the sensitivity. But this microarray or multiplex PCR can give you result within 1 hour. You send the respiratory sample, the report comes within 1 hour. Turnaround time is very less. So these molecular tests, in every private hospital there is this term, though the test is costly. The single test costs around 17 to 25,000. So in a resource poor country like India, but you should know what is the test available. that microarray not only diagnose the bacterial disease, but it also diagnose other viral pathogens also in the single test. So primers are there against all the possible organism in the respiratory system when you say the respiratory sample, when you sending a CSF, so that everything, these molecular tests can be done, that is multiplex PCR, but you write it in the last. Most of the examiner does not like if you write first the PCR, write the cultural part, those smear part, and finally mention the multiplex PCR or microarray detecting the organism, different organism in the single test. Non-specific finding, C-reactive protein I already. Now, C-reactive protein increases in both, all in viral, bacterial. Can you tell any marker which increases only in the bacterial infection? So, this is procalcitonin. Procalcitonin is the marker for bacterial infection only. So, procalcitonin, when you are in doubt whether it is a bacterial etiology or is a fungal etiology or a viral etiology, a procalcitonin, raised procalcitonin can point towards a bacterial infection. So that is another part. And finally, the antimicrobial susceptibility testing. So these are the other causes other than what are the differential diagnoses? Mycoplasma, Haemophilus influenzae, chlamydia, respiratory virus. In case of non-ICU, Streptococcus pneumoniae, Mycoplasma pneumoniae. These are the other different, and ICU, Staphylococcus aureus is another. So in all cases in pneumonia, the Streptococcus pneumoniae is the most common agent. Whether it is an OPD setting, whether it is an non-ICU setting indoor or ICU setting. Already these are the already covered. Sputum, other respiratory sample, when the patient is intubated, you cannot take sputum as sample, you need to send a tracheal aspirate or a bronchoalveolar lavage, patient suspecting of ventilator associated pneumonia or such. So in unconscious patient, you need to send this type of sample. Blood culture is useful to diagnose the invasive infection. Already this any specimen, what to be done for any bacterial specimen, whether it is a sputum or CSF, any bacterial diagnosis, there is three parts. One is primary smear, second is culture, followed by secondary smear or smear up from the culture plate, and antimicrobial diagnosis biochemical and antimicrobial sensitivity. So whenever you are writing any lab diagnosis for any bacterial infection, this is the protocol. Primary smear followed by culture, you should mention which plates you are using. Second is from the growth in the plate, you do a secondary staining to confirm this is the same organism you get in the primary smear. After that, you confirm by biochemical test. So for any, whether it is a sputum, whether it is a CSF or any bacterial specimen, this is the protocol. Primary smear, culture, growth in the culture, do the smear again on the next day, do some biochemical test and antimicrobial sensitivity. So these are the protocol for any bacterial infection. Gram stain and culture, already I have mentioned. So this is in the chocolate agar, the B part, and A is in the blood agar. Blood agar and chocolate agar, these are the two colonies. So blood agar, there is small colonies, 0.5 to 1 dome shaped, green discoloration due to alpha hemolysis. Colonies become flat and central deprivation, already mentioned. In chocolate agar, this is called a bleaching effect in the chocolate agar. Blood culture, because it is usually due to the blood invasion, the most pathogenesis for Streptococcus pneumoniae, so blood culture to be done. Culture smear, catalase negative. What is the main indication? Any cocci, you should do a catalase first. If it is a catalase positive, then it is Staphylococcus, and it is catalase negative, it is Streptococcus. This is the first test. When you get a gram-positive cocci, that is the first biochemical test to be done. And how it is differentiated from viridans, I have already mentioned. Now treatment. What is the treatment? Still in India, what is the treatment for pneumococcus? Still in India, the drug of choice is penicillin group of drug. The resistance is not so much in India. In 2017, ICMR, the last report, it still says the penicillin or the amoxicillin clavulanic acid or amoxicillin is the drug of choice in case of pneumococcus. So it is what is the alternative? Alternative is macrolide. Either you can use azithromycin or quinolone can also be used. So what are the treatment protocols? Initially, you should use the penicillin group of drug or beta-lactam. What is beta-lactam? You read in the pharma. So penicillin group of drugs, amoxicillin clavulanic acid is still the drug of choice in most of the ICMR books. The pneumococcus, if you suspect pneumococcus, amoxicillin or amoxicillin clavulanic acid is the drug of choice, and alternative is azithromycin. Now, here I have mentioned drug resistance. You should know worldwide there is an increased resistance of beta-lactam against pneumococcus. So that's why the MIC breakpoints of penicillin is less than 2 is susceptible. This is beyond your scope. You should remember there is some resistance against beta-lactams, and in which patients they usually the penicillin resistance occurring in children below 2 years and adult more than 65 years. There is a more chance of resistance. So 3 causes of 3 genetic direct DNA incorporation or remodeling of penicillin binding protein. So the resistant part of penicillin due to the alteration of penicillin binding protein PBP. This is the main cause of resistance, the alteration direct due to DNA incorporation. Now, this DNA incorporation, what they are telling, Streptococcus viridans already a common cell. That DNA may be incorporated in Streptococcus pneumoniae, causing a change to penicillin binding protein, leading to resistance. So this is the DNA, there may be due to mutation of certain genes. In United States, it is less than 20% are resistant. Macrolide resistance, there is also resistance against azithromycin or those macrolide group of drug. That is due to target site modification and efflux mechanism. Prevalence of doxycycline resistance is also less than 20%. Fluoroquinolone resistance also occurs. And isolate resistant to drugs from 3. What is MDR? That is a term. What is MDR? Multi-drug resistant bacteria. So MDR is that is resistant to 3 class of antibiotic. When it is resistant to 3 or more class of antibiotic, it is called MDR, multi-drug resistance organism. Now this is one drug, India government, it is produced in India, nafithromycin. The main study was in India for the drug resistant pneumococcus. And this is developed in India, and this is the highlights of nafithromycin. It is more effective than azithromycin. It is a broad spectrum and superior safety and historic development. It is Public Information Bureau, it is PIB as this in their website. So this has been released in the last 1 month by Government of India. the new drug or new molecule for treatment of resistant pneumococcal infection, that is naphithomycin. Launched on November 20, pneumococcal is the #1 vaccine preventable disease. Now, pneumococcal vaccine. What are the two types of vaccine available? One is polysaccharide vaccine, that is usually PPSB 23. That is 23 strains are available. Polysaccharide vaccine, PPSB 23. Another is conjugate vaccine, PCV. What are the conjugate vaccine now available is, one is PCV 13 I have mentioned, but another is PCV 10. PCV is pneumococcal conjugate vaccine. So two types of vaccine. Vaccine is very important part. Whenever you get a pneumococcal question in the long question, the vaccine will be asked in the last question. So PPSB 23 is the one vaccine and protein conjugate vaccine. What is the advantage and what are the disadvantage? More serotypes are covered in PPSB 23, but it is not effective in children less than 2 years. So less than 2 years, there is no immunoresponse against the polysaccharide antigen. So less than 2 years, we cannot give PPSB 23. And a protein conjugate pneumococcal vaccine, PCV 13. Just next part. This is being changed. It is 6 and 14 weeks. Now there are 3 doses. In children, it is included in universal immunization program. And what is the protocol for pneumococcal vaccine? Initially there's 2, now PCV 10 has come. Don't write this 6 to 14 weeks, it has been changed to 3 doses. 3 doses between 6 weeks and 14 weeks, and there must be at least 4 weeks difference between the 2 doses, and PCV 10 is used in universal immunization program. The purple book produced by Indian Association of Pediatrics has changed this. This is the textbook that was written, but in universal immunization program 2024, according to Indian Association of Pediatrics, pneumococcal conjugate vaccine 10, PCV 10 is used in those 6 to 14 weeks ages. PPSB 23 already mentioned, below 2 years of age has low immunity. So vaccine immunogenicity, any new PCV has to meet the following criteria. This is the vaccine development process. Now this is PCV 13, now change to PCV 10. So this is the given in the Indian Association of Pediatric book. Now PCV 10 is used, 3 doses between 6 weeks to 14 weeks of children, not PCV 13. The PCV 10 has been developed and PCV 10 is being used as 6 weeks to 3 doses, 7 to 11 months another 2 booster and 2 doses for another 2 boosters. So this is for children. Three doses followed by 1 dose at 12 to 15 months. And if it is 7th age, the child has come to you at after 7 months. So then it will be 2 doses followed by 1 booster in the second year. If the patient has come after 1 year, it has not even initially vaccinated with pneumococcal vaccine, then 2 doses and booster is not required at 12 to 23 months. So if a patient has come after 2 years, the baby is already 2 years of age, then you give 2 doses. But don't remember this all complicated thing. Remember what is included, that is 3 doses of PCV 10 between 6 weeks to 14 weeks followed by a booster. What is the first part? At 12 to 15 months. This I have taken from the purple book of Indian Association of Pediatrics, but you remember the routine immunization part, that is 3 doses between 6 weeks to 14 weeks with PCV 10. Clear? PCV 10, 3 doses between 6 weeks to 14 weeks followed by a booster between 12 to 15 months. Now, who are the high risk group? Now, another protocol, if you adult vaccination of pneumococcus, what is the strategy for adult vaccination? Usually vaccines are not given between 5 to 15 years. 5 to 50 years. In this age group, if there is no high risk condition, there is no vaccination of pneumococcal between 5 years to 50 years of age. In these cases, you can give high risk. The chronic heart disease, chronic lung disease, diabetes mellitus, a cochlear implant patient, or CSF leaks. Otherwise, in between the age of 5 years and 50 years, pneumococcal vaccine is not required. But an adult patient has come to you. He or she wishes to take a vaccination for pneumococcal. What would be the dose? Adult patient has come to you. He or she wishes to have above 60 or above 50 patient for pneumococcal vaccination. What would be the vaccination schedule? That is, either initially you give PCV 13 and after 1 year give PPSB 23. So this is for adult vaccination. PCV 13 initially pneumococcal conjugate vaccine PCV 13 followed by PPSB 23 after 1 year. This is the vaccine schedule for adult vaccination above 50 years. So it's clear the vaccine part. Splenectomy patient. A patient is supposed to going for splenectomy. When will you give the vaccine? The vaccination should be completed at least 2 weeks before surgery. This type of patient will come. They are going for a surgery. Surgeon will send to you, if you are a medicine specialist or a specialist in vaccines, they went to complete the vaccine. The vaccine should completed by 2 weeks prior to surgery. Now, any question from your side? So, the things you should read about the pneumococcus is main two respiratory system and CNS are involved. How will you differentiate with Streptococcus viridans? What is the treatment protocol? And what are the vaccines? And pathogenesis, what are the virulence factor and pathogenesis? Pathogenesis is two parts of pathogenesis it should mention. The capsule is the most important virulence factor other than pneumolysine, autolysine or those adhesive enzymes. And finally, it is mostly spread by bloodstream. So it is initially, it is a commensal in nasopharynx, so blood spread. This part to be mentioned in pathogenesis. Virulence factor and pathogenesis, this treatment is still beta-lactam is the drug of choice in India, but you can mention the nafithromycin, the newly advent antibiotic for these pneumococcal disease or gram-positive disease, and vaccine.